The Nigerian state is a product of the historic amalgamation of 1914, which brought together communities of diverse peoples and cultures. It was from that point that the nation's constitutional journey started. Between 1914 and 1960, when Nigeria gained political independence, there were a series of constitutional innovations, including the Clifford Constitution of 1922, which gave franchise to only Lagos and Calabar, and the Richards Constitution of 1946, which divided Nigeria into three regions: the North, the West, and the East. In 1951, Sir John Macpherson, the Governor General of Nigeria, introduced a new constitution, the salient features of which were political parties and a system of bicameral legislature in the Western region. It was in 1954 that Oliver Littleton established a federal system of government in Nigeria, making the regions autonomous and providing for a premier for each region. The Lancaster House Conference of 1957 granted self-rule to the Western region, the Eastern region, and later to the Northern region in 1959, thus moving Nigeria closer to independence. The conference also established the Minorities Commission of Inquiry to examine the problems of the minorities. It made the Eastern House of Assembly bicameral and classified the chiefs in the region. The conference also introduced the Senate at the center and discussed Nigeria's independence.
The success of Nigeria in the future will depend on the outcome of the present conference, and the constitution which emerges from it will probably form the basis of the future Nigerian constitution, which Nigerians may wish to draw up for themselves in the light of practical experience of running an independent country.
There was a London conference of May 1960, whose deliberations resulted in the final adoption of the Independence Constitution. At independence, Nigeria retained the British Crown as a head of state. A new Republican Constitution was introduced in 1963, giving Nigeria a Republican status. It did away with the British monarch as head of state, created the office of the President as head of state and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, and established the Supreme Court of Nigeria, thereby terminating appeals to the Privy Council in England. What happened between October 1, 1960 and January 15, 1966, when Nigeria experienced her first military coup, is now history. An ad hoc constitutional conference convened by the Yakubu Gowon administration in May 1966 was mandated to discuss various types of constitutional arrangement. At the conference, a few delegates advocated a system of confederation, but the consensus was in favor of a federation with a strong center as championed by the minorities, who also pressed for the creation of more states, which was accepted in principle. The conference adjourned to reconvene in October 1966. It never did. However, Gowon created 12 new states out of the then existing 4 regions. A constituent assembly made up of 223 members was set up in 1977 by General Olusegun Obasanjo. Its mandate was to deliberate on a draft constitution already drawn up by a Constitution Drafting Committee, CDC. The assembly was chaired by Justice Sir Udo Udoma, and it was the recommendations of this body that led to the adoption of the 1979 Constitution, which replaced the parliamentary system with a presidential system of government. It was the 1979 Constitution that governed the Shehu Shagari administration before it was toppled in a military coup in December 1983. In 1986, President Ibrahim Babangida set up the Political Bureau and the Constitution Review Committee as parts of his transition to civil rule program. A 561-member Constituent Assembly, which followed in 1988 and chaired by Justice Anthony Anyagolu, deliberated among other key issues on the Sharia laws, creation of states, and adoption of Option A4 for elections. General Babangida created more states based on the 1979 Constitution. The late General Sani Abacha's Constitutional Conference, chaired by Justice Adolphus Karibi White, introduced very important changes, which included the creation of new states, 6 geopolitical zones, the concept of power shift and power rotation, and increase of revenue derivation from 3% to 13%. In all the constitutional discussions, the central issues had to do with the concept of federalism, which was introduced into the Nigerian political system in 1951 to 1954, dropped in 1960 in favor of different constitutions for the federal and regional governments, and then reverted again in 1979 to 1989.